everyone, and welcome back to Homeschool and Chill, the YouTube channel that seeks to alleviate your stress and anxiety about homeschooling. My name is Corinne, and if this is your first time coming to the channel, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe so that you can be notified of whenever I release a new video. So, today's topic, I want to talk to you about socialization. If you have been homeschooling for a while now, or even if you've just expressed that you would like to think about homeschooling at some point, you've probably been met with some concern from either family or friends about the dangers of not socializing your children enough. So that's what this video is about today, is how to confront those issues and how to make sure that your child is getting enough socialization, how to put some of those concerns to rest, and even how to deal with some of those family and friends who come to you and say that homeschooling is not a good idea because your child will not be socialized enough. So without further ado, socialization. Okay, so as I said before, if you've been homeschooling for a little while, or maybe if you are just starting to mention that, hey, I think that homeschooling may be a good idea for our family, then you've probably had some family members or some friends who mentioned, well, what about socialization? How will your children get to socialize enough if they're just at home with you? So I'm going to kind of, dispel some myths about socialization and put your mind at ease, especially if you are a new homeschooling parent. That may really be one of your concerns as well. That, okay, I really see the benefits of possibly homeschooling my child where they can learn things at their own pace, where we don't have some of the issues that we would have at public school, but how will I make sure that my child is socializing enough if it's just us at home? So here are some points that I want to mention to you about socialization within homeschooling. Number one, it's not about the quantity of socializing experiences, but the quality. So if you compare public school to homeschooling, most people think that children are being socialized in public school or they're having adequate socialization. So let's actually break down what public school is like. When you sit there and consider that between 7 to 8 hours a day, your child is at school. They're in a room with other children, but the majority of the time that they are in school, are they really getting to socialize? Are they really spending 7 to 8 hours talking to these other children or even talking to their teacher? And in most cases, no. No, they are not. One thing that I like to remind people, whenever people are talking to me about socialization or acting like they're just so concerned about whether or not my 3 girls are being socialized enough, I like to remind them of something that almost all teachers have said at some point in a public school setting. Whenever you're in class and you are talking to your friends, your teacher is quick to remind you, we are not here to socialize. So anyone who has any concerns about your child getting adequate socialization in a homeschool setting, remind them that in public school, you're not there to socialize. Your teacher makes it very clear that we're not here to socialize. You're here to learn. You're here to check off whatever things are on a checklist that you're supposed to do for the day. But the teacher, the whole system, they could care less about how well your children are actually socializing. To expound on this whole quality of socializing also is to look at just the people that are involved in the whole socializing process. Even when your children are allowed some time to socialize and talk in a public school setting, you have to look at who they're socializing with. So in a public school setting, the way that school is usually broken down is that your child is in a classroom with maybe 20 to 30 other students who are at the same age. No more than a year or 2 apart, depending on, the breakdown of a classroom. So if it's a first grade class, usually you're just going to have 6-year-olds, and depending on when their birthdays land, you might end up having some 7-year-olds also. Okay. So for the most part, the children that your child is going to be spending the most amount of time with are only people who are exactly their age. And then there's just the classroom teacher who's really dominating most of the talking in the classroom, depending on how dynamic your child's teacher is. If you have a really dynamic teacher, then they might allow the students to talk and interact with each other more. But for the most part, it is the child speaking to the teacher, speaking to the students, and then they raise their hand to get permission to speak and they answer questions. And whenever they are speaking to one another, it's usually just about the subjects in school. So here's some issues about that. First of all, your children are only getting experience talking to people who are at their same age level. And when you get out into the real world, that's usually not the case. You're usually not only socializing with people who are just your age and from the same neighborhoods that you are from. You're going to be around all different types of people. You're going to be around people of different age groups, different backgrounds, and things like that. And to be effective in this world, especially this changing world that we're in now, your child needs to have experience socializing with all sorts of people and not people who are almost exactly like them. And so public school sometimes does not allow for that. Now let's bring in the homeschooling aspect. If you are homeschooling, then you kind of control the different environments or things that your child will be exposed to. And so if you want your child to have a wonderful socializing experience, then all you have to do is make sure that you allow your child to be in certain programs or go different places where they will encounter people and socialize. So in my case with my daughters, when we are at home, believe it or not, talking with your own family is socializing because we talk about things that we're learning. We talk about things that we're interested in. We actually have fun with each other, and we're not only exclusively talking about subjects in school. So my children, they get that experience of just socializing about whatever they want to, and they socialize with their peers because my girls are close in age. They socialize with adults because my husband and I are there. And then when we take our learning experience outside of these four walls, then they're able to socialize with whoever's out there. People in the grocery store, people at a museum that we go to, whenever we go on family trips, whatever we do, everywhere we go, they're socializing with different people. And for the most part, every situation where our children have met and spoken with adults, they have spoken just as confidently and happily with adults as they do with children. They don't feel any different speaking to an adult than they do with children. So they have the skills, the people skills, to talk to people their age, to enjoy being around, smaller children, older children, adults, elderly. It's really no difference to them because the experience that they've had is that their socializing experience isn't just really centered around people just their age. So it's really funny when people talk to my girls and they talk about how well spoken that they are, how easily they can keep a conversation with adults. And then when we say that we homeschool, then suddenly they're like, but what about socialization? It's like, I don't think they have a problem socializing. You just said that they socialize so well, but now you're concerned about them socializing now that you know that they are homeschooled. So it's very interesting. It's just a matter of people's minds being trained to accept one thing, and when something new comes along, they just don't know how to deal with that. And that's okay, because for the most part, a lot of us homeschool parents had to go through the same thing. We sit there when we first begin as homeschool parents, we wonder, well, how do I make sure my child is socializing enough? But as I said before, even within your own family, that's still socializing. When you take your children out places and they meet new people, that is socializing. Being in a room with people who are only your age and just being in their presence does not necessarily mean that a meaningful socializing experience is happening. And a lot of issues with socializing that we see in public schools as well, just depending on the school. Some public schools are actually good schools, but in some instances, with some experiences that children have had, when there's bullying involved or teasing or really just this pressure for your children to conform and to follow the crowd, a lot of that is avoided in a homeschool setting. In my opinion, I feel that when my girls are being homeschooled, they have a better chance of really developing their personality as individuals and being able to socialize in settings where they're not being pressured to be someone that they're not. So once they are older and they're more mature and they are out interacting with people more where there's very serious pressures that they're presented with, they're already sure of who they are and they don't feel as much pressure because they've been kind of forced to be in this one bubble that looks only one way. Instead, they're used to interacting with all different kinds of people, but they know who they are in any experience. And so when more serious things comes along, they're able to turn those things down because that's not who I am. Why do I feel any need to try to fit in with you? I don't. I can be myself and do my own thing, and I can kind of get along with and interact with any person that I meet. So I'm not forced to conform to this particular group. But as I said before, you do want to make sure that you are allowing for those opportunities to happen. And that's where it is crucial to not fall into the stereotypical, I guess, homeschool image that most people have in our heads. Most of the time when you tell people that you are homeschooling or that you're planning to homeschool, people who are not familiar with the possibilities that are available for homeschooling, they just immediately think that it's just going to be you and your child sitting in the house and that's it every single day forever, and that's not what homeschooling has to be. Homeschooling can be, you bring in a tutor, you can be part of a co-op, you can go on field trips, you can homeschool out somewhere, you can go to the library and homeschool your children there, you can be part of different programs and different things like that. You can still put your children into, different arts programs, different learning programs, things where they will be able to interact with other people. But it is going to be up to you to make sure that those experiences happen at a rate that is best for your child. And that's the thing that's important, is really focusing on what's best for your child, not just what public school may be doing, not just what your family or friends are expecting, but what is best for your child. Because I think one thing that is amazing about homeschooling is that it really can cater to your child's personality, not just your learning types with, the curriculum that you select or the way that you choose to homeschool, but even with these social experiences. If you have a child who is an extrovert and they really like interacting with people, then you can tailor your homeschool to where your child is able to meet a lot of people and be able to talk without having to worry about getting their name put on the board or having to sit in a corner. As for children who are more of an introvert or more shy, then you can kind of tailor their education that way too, where they are not pressured or forced into situations where they feel uncomfortable around too many people, but they're feeling like, I have to socialize just because this is what's expected of everyone. But at the same time, you can also give them the time and attention that they need to kind of step out of their box a little bit and know when is the right time that they should actually speak up and not just stay silent. And so those are things that aren't necessarily done well in public schools for every child. I can't say that it's not done well in every public school and that it's not done well in every classroom, but it's not necessarily done well for each child. It is not individualized for every child because it's a classroom full of children who are extroverts, introverts, ambiverts, and all of this. And so really being able to tailor things to where every child can feel comfortable is not always possible because, there's always this thing of fairness and everybody having to do the same thing. And so if the assignment is that you have to do a presentation in front of the class, well, then that shy student has to do a presentation in front of the class, and if it's an assignment where the child has to sit there and just be quiet and do a worksheet, then that extrovert has to sit there and be quiet and do that worksheet. And so I feel like homeschooling can really be tailored to your child's personality without them having to have undue pressure or punishment because of just being who they are. And even though it is important that extroverts learn when it's the right time to be quiet and that introverts learn when it's the right time to speak up, it shouldn't necessarily be an everyday situation because that's not always expected of adults either. I'm an extrovert and I'm an adult, and I cannot think of any time in my adult life where I feel like I will be punished for talking too much. I know my own social skills I had to pick up where it's like, okay, I do have to allow others to speak. I do know that in this occasion that I need to be quiet or reverent or whatever the case may be. But there's never been this pressure that I'm going to be punished or shunned, sat in a corner or whatever because of just being myself, talking a lot, So why do we do that to children? Why put them in a situation where they can be punished for just living out their personality? We can teach them what's appropriate for certain times without having to, break them necessarily. And then as far as introverts, when is it that introverts are necessarily, just tormented into being in social situations that they feel uncomfortable in as an adult? Like that doesn't happen. So why do we put that unnecessary pressure on children? So another issue that I hear come up all the time when homeschool parents are being confronted about this whole socializing thing is that if your child isn't being socialized enough, especially if they're not going to a public school and going through a public school socialization situation, is that your children will be odd, or that your children will be awkward or weird and things like that. So, I mean, I think this is one of the sillier reasons that people bring up about why, children should go to public school and not be homeschooled. Because, for one, as far as what's considered to be cool or what's considered to be weird, is really, I don't know. It just depends. It just depends on what group you're with. No matter whether you're homeschooled or no matter if you're public school or private school or what school that you went to, no matter what kind of socializing you did, it just depends on what group you're around, whether you're considered cool or weird. And in my experience in life, I've been around a lot of people where they felt like, oh, I was funny, I was charming, I was this and that. And then I get around another group and I just felt so weird and out of place. I mean, it just really depends on the groups that you're around. And I don't think that changes, like whether you're a child or whether you're an adult. There's just some people that you're going to mesh with and that you're going to thrive in those circles. And there's other circles you're not going to necessarily blend in with so well. And I just think that's part of life. Like, you're not meant to just become every group that you're part of. And I don't think that going to public school necessarily gives you the ability to do that, everyone's going to just love you and think that you're cool or interesting or charming. No, it's part of life that some people are going to think you're odd. Some people are going to think you're weird. Some people are not going to agree with you. Some people are just not going to like you. And it's not even necessarily because you were mean or rude or did something wrong. Some people just aren't going to like you because you're just not their cup of tea. And I think that's okay. Like, you're not meant to be everybody's cup of tea. And so when people mention about homeschool children being weird or odd, I think that's just certain people's opinion. You might have met someone who was a homeschooler and you think that they're weird because they're just not your type of people. But when that homeschooler gets around other people who have have similar interests or the same type of sense of humor, then they're not weird to those people. And just because you went to public school, that doesn't mean that you're not weird. Everyone who's gone to public school can sit there and think of other public school students and can identify certain ones who are weird. Like, I've gone to public school and I've gone to private school, and I can definitely remember, like, to this day, because of how weird they seem to me, I can still remember specific students who were like, oh, they were weird. Oh, they were weird. And it's not a matter of that there was something wrong with that person. It's just that they were not into the same things that I was into. They didn't have the same, social skills that I had or whatever. And so going to public school or going to a private school didn't suddenly make it where other students just thought that they were so interesting. So I think the same thing holds true with homeschooling. If you're a little bit offbeat, if you're not, the status quo, if you don't just conform to, what everyone else is supposed to be doing, then there's going to be some people who just think that you're odd or strange or weird. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that for those ones who are the odd ducks or whatever, homeschooling is great because you don't have this undue pressure to try to fit in with people that you don't really identify with. You just get to be yourself without, being bullied or teased or, feeling left out when you're just trying to learn, And as far as what's considered weird or what's considered cool, I think most of us can agree that most of the things that are considered cool or interesting to a lot of children in public school nowadays isn't necessarily what we're trying to get our children to be. There's countless times that you can think of the cool crowd is usually the bad crowd. And that's not always the case, but I'm just saying there's no absolutes when it comes to this cool or weird type situation. Like, if you were just going to be some charming, interesting person that the majority of people just enjoy being around, that's going to be true whether you go to public school or whether you're homeschooled. That's just your personality. If you are a little offbeat, a little bit different, a little bit quirky, that's just how it's going to be whether you go to public school or whether you're homeschooled. That's just who you are. And I just think that homeschooling is the best environment to really embrace those differences that you may have. If you are offbeat or quirky or odd, then you get to be as offbeat and quirky or odd that you want to be while you're being homeschooled, and you don't have to worry about somebody trying to take your lunch money over it. Or if you are even charming or cool, you don't feel this pressure that you always have to be perfectly charming or cool because that's just what's expected of you as the popular kid. But I don't know. I just think it's ridiculous, the whole idea that homeschooling can make you weird. Like, no. If you're weird by society standards, you're going to be weird whether you go to public school or if you're homeschooled. And like I said, the word weird just really depends on who you're talking to. If you are considered a geek or a nerd in one group, you're considered the coolest, most intelligent person in another group. So I just think it's important to find your people. And as far as public school goes, it might be harder to find your people because everyone's just trying to be this one set standard. But if you're homeschooled and you're going to a science club once a week, or you're doing certain things online with other children who are into the same things that you are, they're not going to think that you're weird because you know all different kinds of dinosaurs or whatever it is that you're into. Your people are going to like you. So I don't know. I just think that's one of the strange myths about socialization. So just a quick recap of this entire video. Let's focus on the quality of your child's socializing experiences and not necessarily the quantity. It's not important how many people that your child is exposed to. It's the quality of those engagements that they have. And I think we can realize that that's true even as we become adults, because we realize as we get older that, it seems like as we get older, we get fewer and fewer real friends. We just have maybe just a select handful of people who we know are our true friends. Everybody else is just an associate or a colleague or whatever. But your true friends that are really there for you and really accept you for who you are, there's not a whole bunch of them. And so why not just teach our children that from the beginning? Like, okay, here's colleagues, here's associates, here's other people that you might interact with, but your people are only going to be a small number of people, and you don't have to try to fit in with everybody. So focus on the quality of your child's socializing experiences. That's not about a whole lot of people they're exposed to. It's not about being the same exact age, because you can find so much amazement in socializing with people who are much older than you, younger than you, a different race, a different culture, a different socioeconomic status. You can find great socializing opportunities within all different kinds of people. It doesn't just have to be from children just your age in one district that comes from the same neighborhoods and income level. So focus on that. And let's not forget that actually speaking and talking with your family is a form of socializing too. And I think it's one of the best socializing experiences that you can have. For everyone who's super, super concerned about socialization for children and believing that socializing is so crucial and so important, then that would lead you to think that, well, if socializing is so important, then wouldn't we want to make sure that a large amount of that socializing actually happens with the people who are supposed to influence your child the most, which are the family members, parents and siblings and people who genuinely love and care about the child. And so that's what homeschooling allows, that the greatest influences in a child's life get to socialize with them the most, and not outward influences who may actually be negative influences. So I just wanted to share this video to help those of you out who are brand new with homeschooling, who are a little bit nervous and fearful about your child not getting enough socialization with other children or just socialization period, and to kind of reassure some of you who have been homeschooling for a while, because sometimes we do need reassurance. We know this stuff, but once family and friends gets in our ear and we're kind of still trying to de-school ourselves about what homeschooling should and shouldn't look like, then it's really easy to be like, oh, well, my child needs to be in this setting or that setting. But trust your gut. And if you really feel like your child is really needing some friends and really needing to get out there, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up on homeschooling and send them back to public school. That might just mean that you need to sign your child up for some other programs, hook up with a co-op, whatever the case may be, make sure that your homeschooling isn't just happening in your home. It's called homeschooling, but it doesn't always have to take place in a home. It doesn't have to take place in a school. It can be the whole world. The whole wide world is your child's classroom. So I hope you like this video. I hope that you like, share, and subscribe. But most of all, love yourselves. Bye, loves.